Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Chad Licciardello.
This week, contrasting campaigns. Kamala Harris hits the road while Donald Trump mostly stays at home.
We're going to be asking veteran Republican political operative Doug Heye what he reckons about those strategies. But first...
And it was a whirlwind first week on the campaign trail for the new Democratic ticket of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, with rallies drawing large crowds in battleground states. 12,000 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. 15,000 in Detroit, Michigan and Glendale, Arizona, and 12,000 in Las Vegas, Nevada, where another 4,000 were sent home due to the heat. Both Harris and Walz have been honing their attack lines, which are fast becoming familiar to their supporters.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
You know what makes society work best is when you learn a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. Mind your own damn business.
It's only been 2 weeks and they're already performing their greatest hits.
Yeah,
that was fast.
They don't want to hear the new stuff. The enthusiasm of the crowds, though, as well as Walz and Harris themselves, continues to build on the campaign trail. And after a decade or so of hyper-partisan, mostly negative politics, it actually seems like these guys are having fun.
And Kamala Harris has done something that we will forever be grateful for her. She has brought out the joy in our politics.
Well, if Kamala Harris is bringing the joy, a very different vibe this week from Donald Trump. He spent the week hunkered down at his golf resort in Palm Beach, Florida, with just one rally in Montana, which isn't even a battleground at the presidential level, although it could hold a key to a Senate majority ultimately. It was there that Trump took square aim at Tim Walz.
He ordered tampons to be put into boys' bathrooms. Do we have any children here? Please close your ears. He ordered tampons in boys' bathrooms, okay?
Wow. And the fact checkers said that that is actually true, noting that the bill that Walz signs did not specifically mention boys' bathrooms, but the language of the statute was gender neutral and therefore compelled schools to apply it to boys' bathrooms used by transmasculine, trans boys and male-presenting students.
Look, I have to say I disagree with Snopes on this one as far as their interpretation of the law goes. I know they're doing their best. If you look at the actual law, it says that students must be provided access to menstrual products according to a plan developed by the school district. So it's up to the schools what they do. And if we look at what's happened in reality in Minnesota, in the state's largest school district, the menstrual products are not found in traditional male-only bathrooms. Instead, they're provided in non-gendered bathrooms, girls' bathrooms, or from health staffers. So I think that this attack actually isn't true. Although I suspect Kamala Harris wouldn't mind too much Trump publicising that her and Tim Walz stand for free tampons.
Well, funnily enough, Chaz, it turns out now Snopes agrees with you. The earlier version of their fact check yesterday rated the claims of tampons in boys' bathrooms as true. Now they say, actually it's mostly false. That's quite a reversal from a usually credible fact-checking team. And speaking of rather abrupt about-faces, Trump has reversed his earlier decision to only debate Harris on Fox News on September 4th, a date that she had not agreed to, and is now proposing other debates on September 10th and 25th.
The other side has to agree to the terms. They may or may not agree. I don't know if they're going to agree. She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent.
So, for now, it looks like the debates are back on, although Vice President Harris made it pretty clear that that first debate will be on the 10th of September, not the 4th, as Trump wants.
Well, I'm glad that he's finally agreed to a debate on September 10th. I'm looking forward to it and hope it shows up.
Are you open to more debate?
I am happy to have that conversation about an additional debate right after September 10th, for sure.
I'm no body language expert, Chaz, but I think that head shake probably means don't bet on another debate. But we will see. Meanwhile, conservative media outlets, including Fox News and The Blaze, have been huffing this week that Harris was
caught giving the exact same speech, almost word for word, in both Wisconsin and Michigan.
And here's their proof.
It really is good to be back in Wisconsin. It is so good to be back in Michigan. Listen, let me tell you, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And listen, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I took on perpetrators of all kinds and had a summer job at McDonald's. I had a summer job at McDonald's. So hear me when I say, so hear me, Detroit, when I say, I know Donald Trump's tight. I know Donald Trump's tight.
That's just normal.
Yeah. To any reporter who has ever covered a political campaign, there is nothing new in that. It is called a stump speech, and you will hear the same speech several times a day, day after day, week after week on the campaign trail. I mean, how many times have we heard Trump talk about this?
Hannibal Lecter. Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter. Does anybody know the name? Please raise your hand. Young people didn't. The young ones didn't. They don't want to hear about Hannibal.
Really, none of us do.
He's late and he's great.
Yeah, exactly. Although, given that there is a lot of interest in what Harris and Walz are saying on the campaign trail at the moment, maybe she needs to mix things up a little bit in her stump speech. Chances are that her Michigan crowd already saw that speech in Wisconsin on YouTube before they actually went to Detroit.
They're loving it. They're cheering before she even says the line. They know what's coming. I don't think she needs to change her stump speech. What I think she needs to do is sit for a proper interview or a press conference for once. Her last proper interview or presser was 44 days ago now. It was when she was defending Joe Biden's debate to Anderson Cooper way back when. Trump's team's been trying to draw attention to this any way they can. JD Vance at one point had a daily count of how long Harris had been leader without sitting for a single media interview. Then he turned up to Kamala Harris's press gaggle at the airport and he sympathised with them for having so little to do.
I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days. Have they given you guys an explanation for why she won't take questions from reporters? No? Nobody? Okay, great. Well, I hope that she changes your mind because it'd be good for the American people, and I think it'd be good for you all if she actually ran a real campaign instead of one from a basement with a teleprompter. So have a good one, guys.
Then he started delivering a whole string of zingers like this one here. If we could convince Kamala Harris that illegal aliens are actually journalists trying to ask her questions, she'd build that border wall in 5 seconds. Meanwhile, Trump tried to shame her his way by conducting a self-destructive press conference where he taunted her like they were school kids.
She's not doing any news conference. You know why she's not doing it? Because she can't do a news conference. She doesn't know how to do a news conference. She's not smart enough to do a news conference.
Well, I don't know if they successfully shamed her or if she just wanted to stop JD Vance making jokes, but Kamala Harris finally relented just slightly, and she took exactly 71 seconds worth of questions in front of her plane. We've already played some of those seconds. Ironically, one of those questions was about her answering questions.
Madam Vice President, there's been a lot of questions about when you're going to sit down for your first interview since being the nominee. Do you have any update on that?
I've talked to my team. I want us to get an interview scheduled before the end of the month.
Well done. The end of the month. So soon. Only 3 weeks.
Don't want to rush that.
Look, it's kind of pathetic, but look, I know that Trump wants her to do a press conference to give him something to attack. I'm not naive. I also know why she isn't doing them. It's because she doesn't need to, as her own campaign is saying. The voters that she needs are at the local level. They're not reading the national press. She'd be better off doing podcasts or comedy shows or something like that. Another campaign person asked, what incentive is there for her to take more questions? She's getting out exactly the message that she wants to get out. And, well, that's true. I mean, she's doing great right now. But the thing is, the public need to know who they're voting for. Mail-in voting's in like a month's time. And that's why the media needs to make more of a nuisance of themselves rather than just taking this lying down to give her an incentive to answer questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Maybe. Trump is the exception to the rule, really. No presidential candidate since Walter Mondale in 1984 have consistently answered questions from the press because it's just too risky. But Trump has been the exception, so maybe the rules are changed. As for Trump, he might want to skip the next invitation to talk to Elon Musk on Twitter. The pair had a conversation yesterday that was allegedly targeted by a denial of service attack, although tech experts said no, that didn't happen. Either way, it delayed the start by more than 40 minutes, and once it did get underway, Trump sounded strange, slurring, like he'd suddenly developed a lisp.
If a gun goes off, the crowd control people showed us this. When guns go off, and it does happen in stadiums at a soccer match or some kind of a match, everybody flees. They call it a stampede, like cattle.
Now, some speculated that maybe Trump's dental caps had slipped or he'd suffered a stroke, but in reality it seems really just to have had more to do with the poor quality of the mobile phone call that Trump was on. But still, it was all a little bit reminiscent of that glitchy campaign launch that Ron DeSantis had on Twitter with Elon Musk last year that helped to set a negative narrative for his campaign. Oh, and by the way, so much for Trump's vow at the Republican convention never again to talk about the assassination attempt. They talked about hardly anything but for about half of that conversation. But still, Democrat hopes of holding on to the White House in November have certainly been given another boost this week, with a poll of the 3 Rust Belt battleground states putting Vice President Harris in front of former President Trump. The Siena poll for the New York Times is one of the most closely watched of those swing state surveys and has Harris leading now by 6 points in Wisconsin, 5 points in Michigan, and 2 points in Pennsylvania. That is in the 5-way race. Head-to-head, and Harris also leads in all 3 states by 4 points, 50 to 46. And, as we keep saying, if Harris sweeps those 3 Rust Belt states, she wins the election. She doesn't even need to win any of those Sun Belt states that Biden won in 2020, but she's also making up ground there as well in the average of polls, trailing by less than half a point in Georgia, tied in Arizona and Nevada as well.
Well, 2 poll findings that interested me, John. One, even though Trump is generally struggling in the polls right now, as you pointed out, there is still one clear ray of light for him, and that is people still trust Trump with the economy. In CNBC's latest poll, for example, 31% of independents say they'll be financially better off if Trump wins, whereas only 10% say they'll be better off if Harris wins. I'd be focusing like a laser on that if I was Trump, rather than all the other stuff he focuses on, not much like a laser. But on the other hand, some more bad news for Trump, which is the rise of Harris seems to have won back the Democratic-leaning voters who had previously been flirting with RFK. What that means is if you average 6 high-quality recent polls, Harris is ahead by an average of 1.5 points in a head-to-head matchup with Trump, but she's ahead by 3.3 points when you include all the third-party candidates and independents. So RFK is becoming an unambiguous spoiler for Donald Trump, and that could make a massive difference in this election if it stays the case.
Yeah, for sure. Meanwhile, in Nevada this week, Kamala Harris made one of her first new policy announcements.
And eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Hey, not fair, says Donald Trump. He claims that Harris
just copied my no taxes on tips policy. This was a Trump idea. She has no ideas. She can only steal from me.
And Trump has a point. Yeah. He has been talking about this policy of removing federal taxes on tips for hospitality workers for several months now. It was a part of the Republican Party platform. It already has bipartisan support with a bill introduced by Senator Ted Cruz, supported now by both of Nevada's Democratic senators, Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson saying that he's going to pass this as soon as he can.
And that particularly stands out because Kamala Harris has so few other policies.
Yeah, right now.
Although she says she's going to deal with that next week. She says she's putting out a platform. We'll see about that. But the good news for Donald Trump is that he's now got another new policy that Kamala Harris can rip off in a few weeks.
Seniors should not pay taxes on Social Security. And they won't. They won't.
Seems pretty similar to the last policy, except this time they won't be charging taxes on any Social Security income that may have been used to bolster the Social Security or Medicare trust funds. And that's great if you're one of the people avoiding taxes now. Not so great though for Social Security and Medicare. They may have reduced revenues of about $1.8 trillion over the next decade under this policy, which then means that Social Security's trust fund would become insolvent in 2032 rather than 2033, and Medicare's trust fund would become insolvent in 2030 rather than 2036. So that's a pretty bad idea, yeah? No. Maybe bad economically, great idea politically. Because the Old People's Lobby Group would love it, the AARP, and some House Democrats, they've already introduced legislation that stops taxing Social Security benefits. And in fact, Tim Walz, of all people, already exempted Social Security payments from state taxes for a lot of people as well. So who's gonna criticise Trump? They're all in on it. It's a win-win policy. So get thieving, Madam Vice President.
Yeah, they're all getting stuck into it. Well, joining us now is Doug Heye. He is a veteran of Republican politics. He served in the Bush administration. He worked at the Republican National Committee and in senior roles on Capitol Hill for many, many years. Doug, welcome to Planet America.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
So, Doug, what do you make of Donald Trump's campaign, particularly in the last week and a half or so, largely staying in Mar A Lago, just one rally, one press conference, that very long and slightly peculiar interview with Elon Musk yesterday. What do you think the strategy is here?
This is not Democracy Manifest. What we've seen is obviously Kamala Harris has sort of taken the political world by storm, became the Democratic nominee through some, I don't want to say trickery, but through some party maneuvering, and not by a typical primary vote. So what the Trump campaign was focused on doing, it now can't do. It's not running against Joe Biden. I think they're trying to figure out what their best steps are forward. And as we know, sometimes Donald Trump's baby steps tend to be clumsy ones.
Now, Trump's favourability ratings at the moment in some polls are at record levels, yet he seems to be behaving almost desperately online at the moment and in some press conferences saying some truly insane things. Why do you think he's acting like this?
That's what Donald Trump does. And he is most comfortable when he's in a situation where he's dominating the media narrative, whether that's for good or bad. Could be a whole longer separate conversation, but he wants to be the focus, and he feels that if he's in the focus of what the news media is covering, then he's in the driver's seat. And the past few weeks, he has not been in that driver's seat. He's not been the focus, and I think it's very clear that next week it's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump to really break through. And when you have Biden speaking on Monday, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and then, capped off with at the end of the week on Thursday, with Kamala Harris, the new Democratic nominee, speaking. So it's going to be a week of really intense coverage on Democrats, not so much on Trump. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him act up a bit to do some of these sort of maneuverings that he knows can shine some attention on him, whether those are ultimately the smartest things in the world or not.
Now, leaving aside the last 2 weeks, Trump has held 8 rallies this entire calendar year, whereas he held over 20 rallies in August of 2016 alone. So should we draw any conclusions from that?
I think part of what that may tell us is that, he's older than he was when he ran last time or the first time. And that might be a factor in it, because otherwise it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If he speaks at a rally somewhere, he's going to get a lot of attention, media attention. What's also been curious about what Trump has been doing in this situation is not just the frequency, but where he's been campaigning. His last rally was in Montana. Donald Trump is going to win Montana by 30 points, maybe 40 points. He does not need to spend any time or resources there. He needs to be in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, my home state of North Carolina, Wisconsin, and sort of just on a tour going back to various cities and towns in those states, because that's where the election's going to be won or lost.
Doug, Vice President Harris has been coming under increasing criticism for not sitting down for a one-on-one interview, hardly taking any questions at all from the travelling press pack. Do voters actually care about media access to a candidate, or is this just reporters getting huffy?
Well, it's not front of mind for voters, but the fact that she hasn't done any seems to suggest that there might be an issue there. And as she has really kind of risen in the past few weeks, she's gotten an enormous amount of positive media coverage. The American media will tell you, even some of the British media will tell you every great thing that Kamala Harris can do, from the cookbook she owns to how she picks out wines on a wine list and all these other sorts of things. And I'm not making those up. Those are actual examples. And so at some point, she's going to have to sit down and face some tough questions. What I'm sort of curious to see from Harris is if her first sit down is on one of the late night comedy shows with a Jimmy Fallon or a Stephen Colbert or somebody like that. It seems almost a natural that you would have her go there first. But if she did that at this point without sitting down with anyone else, that may raise more questions for her than answers, even if she does very well at it. She's benefited from, she gives good speeches. She has an energy about her that she didn't have when she ran first time. It's part of why she's done well. But she has to take tough questions, and at this point, she just hasn't done so.
Doug Heye, thanks for being with us on Planet America.
Thank you.
Time now on Planet America for the briefing room. Here's Melina Wicks.
America's Olympic performance was amazing. They smashed records in the pool, on the track, and in the most cutthroat competition of all, getting people to spend all their money.
Chances are high that sports betting will surge as athletes around the world go head-to-head in the Paris Olympic Games. Since Tokyo 2021, 16 more states have legalized it, opening up the chance for more Americans to legally bet and maybe win big as athletes compete for gold.
Yes, just like an Olympian, you could win big. But unless you're Simone Biles, you probably won't. Sports gambling has only been legal in the US since 2018, but now it's up and running in 38 states and Washington, D.C., with lawmakers and gaming companies eager to capture an illegal market estimated at $400 billion a year. So where did that number come from? The New York Times tracked it down to a 1999 report by the National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which cited this news article that was about the commission saying they were told illegal sports betting runs anywhere from $80 to $380 billion. Who told them that? Dunno. Some guy. But even if we assume that mystery person was really good at estimating, $80 to $380 billion is quite a big range, and it's still not $400 billion. But who cares? Now that sports gambling is legal for a majority of Americans, the real question is, who's actually winning, not punters?
Americans have spent more than $250 billion sports betting. That's the GDP of Greece.
Don't you hate it when you think you've picked a sure thing and you end up gambling away Greece? The states that legalize sports betting aren't winning either. Lobbyists convinced them to keep gambling taxes low, which means states like Kansas took just $12 million last year, less than half of 1% of the $2.8 billion wagered there. Or as the gambling revenue put it,
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Contrast that with New York, a state that ignored lobbyists' arguments and instead set their tax rate at 51%. Not only have they got by far the most tax out of legalizing online sports betting, they're also in the top 5 for gambling spend per capita. I am shocked to learn a lobbyist has been less than truthful. But let's not be too hard on the big sports betting companies, because it turns out they're not winning either. The two biggest players, DraftKings and FanDuel, lost hundreds of millions of dollars last year. Competition for market share has been so intense they spend up to $1,600 just to acquire a new customer. They should have read the fine print on their advertising. Sportsbooks are so desperate for new customers, they're signing marketing deals with colleges, despite the legal age in most states being 21. Because the one thing US college students need is more debt. So if punters aren't winning, and state governments aren't winning, and gambling companies aren't winning, who exactly is winning from the legalization of sports gambling?
DraftKings, listen to me. You listen good. I appreciate you for recognizing how valuable my time is.
Well, at least Kevin Hart is getting paid.
The rise and rise of Kamala Harris does seem to be getting under Donald Trump's skin just a little bit, at least according to the New York Times this week, which reported that Trump has been ranting about Harris and has called her a bitch repeatedly in private. Meanwhile, Trump supporters have been claiming that Harris has gone one better, calling him a motherfucker. And here is their Exhibit A.
I can't say it. It starts with an M and it ends with a. Not ER.
But if you were to start that clip just a couple of seconds earlier, it kind of changes the context.
What's your favorite curse word?
I can't say it. It starts with an M and it ends with a.
So she's not describing Trump, she is describing her favourite curse word, and she may well therefore use that phrase about Trump. We can't rule that out. And Barack Obama reportedly called Trump a corrupt mother on several occasions. So make of all that what you will, Chaz.
Kamala Harris has never seemed happier than she did when using that word. But now it is time to enter the No Malarkey Zone.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
In the last few weeks, Kamala Harris's rallies have been drawing some pretty decent crowds.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
They are big, and we know they're getting under Trump's skin because Trump seethes extremely publicly. First, he claimed her crowds were only there to see the music acts.
She has to go get entertainers. They start leaving as soon as she opens her mouth. We didn't need anybody to get the people here. We didn't need a star. We didn't need a star. We didn't need some entertainer to fill it up.
Fact check, it's true that Trump hasn't had any big-name musicians, although he did play this song at his Montana rally. To which Celine Dion tweeted, "Really? That song?" Recognising that Trump and Vance may not want to be associated with the theme song to the Titanic. Then Trump suggested that Kamala actually pays for her crowds. But as Harris's crowds kept turning up and getting bigger, Trump changed his story, saying that, well, he draws bigger crowds than her anyway. Not just bigger crowds than Kamala Harris, bigger crowds than Martin Luther King Jr.
I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size. I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people. And I'm okay with it, because I liked Dr. Martin Luther King.
But just to be clear, Kamala Harris is currently drawing probably twice the crowds that Trump's drawing at the moment. She's trolling him on Twitter about this all the time. But as for that January 6th crowd that Trump was referring to there, it drew an estimated 53,000 people. That's a lot of people. But MLK's famous speech drew an estimated 250,000 people. That's more people. But you know, Trump also has a dream. A dream that one day crowd sizes will not be judged by official estimates, but by him looking at a photo. However, the malarkey doesn't stop there, because Trump's latest claim is that Harris's campaign has used AI to fake these photos of Harris and Walz disembarking in front of a crowd in Detroit.
Has anyone noticed that Kamala cheated at the airport? There was nobody at the plane, and she AI'd it, and showed a massive crowd of so-called followers, but they didn't exist. The same thing is happening with her fake crowds at her speeches. She should be disqualified because the creation of a fake image is election interference.
Oh, that's a big claim. It's going to require some big evidence, but he brought it. Trump linked to a tweet which claimed that if you zoom in on the photo, you'll see the reflections in the plane's engines don't seem to show any crowd. Dun, dun. Look, the obvious response to this is that we know the crowds were real because multiple videos exist of the crowd taken by people who were in the crowd, including from some news organisations that covered the event live. But interestingly, if you look at that PBS footage, there are also no crowd reflections in the plane either. What's going on, PBS? Have they gotten to you too? No. The reason the crowds aren't reflected in the plane is, as this video from the event shows, the crowds are actually way further away from the plane than they seem. They're miles away. But the photos shot from the back of the crowd creates a perspective trick that makes them look like the crowd are underneath the wings. They are not. So, as MLK once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends away from malarkey.
Is that what he said? Did he really say that?
Yeah, he did.
Sure.
Fact check, true.
That's it for another trip to Planet America. We'll see you back here at or about the same time next week.
And don't forget the Fireside Chat this Friday night on ABC News and anytime on iView, YouTube and Facebook, and the brand new Pet podcast right there.
Bye-bye.